My name is Sarah Mitchell, and for 15 years, I believed my husband when he said we were building a future together. October 14th, 2024, 8:47 p.m. I'll never forget that timestamp because it's burned into the country club's security footage in the phones of 150 wedding guests who watched my husband tap his champagne glass at our anniversary party and announce he was leaving me for his 22-year-old secretary. Where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments below. If something like this has happened to you, share your experience in the comments. You're not alone. Before we continue, please hit that like button. It really helps share these important stories, and subscribe if you want to hear more stories of justice being served. But what David didn't know was that his billionaire Uncle Gerald was sitting in his wheelchair in that ballroom, watching everything unfold, and had just rewritten his will the week before. The champagne flute slipped from my hand and shattered on the marble floor as Ashley stepped forward from behind the bar, a massive diamond ring catching the light on her finger. "Happy anniversary, Sarah," David smirked, and I swear I could hear phones clicking and recording all around me. My sister Margaret grabbed my arm to steady me, but my eyes were locked on Uncle Gerald's face. David's only living relative, the man worth $53 million, who'd paid for David's law school and attended every single one of our anniversaries. The disappointment in his eyes mixed with something else I couldn't quite place. Calculation? He wheeled himself out without a word, his medical team following closely behind. "Did you really think," David continued, his voice carrying across the silent room, "that I'd waste my prime years on someone who gave up her ambition to play housewife?" 3 months before that horrible night, I'd asked David about a $3,000 withdrawal from our joint account. "You're being paranoid again," he'd sighed over breakfast, not even looking up from his phone. "Client entertainment, I told you. Jesus, Sarah, this jealousy is exhausting. Maybe you should see someone." Can you believe he said that? Let me know in the comments. The gaslighting had become such an art form that when I found a Victoria's Secret receipt, "I wear a size 8, this was for a size 2. He actually laughed. "For you. For our anniversary. Now you've ruined the surprise. This is why I can't do nice things." And I apologized. I actually apologized to him. The marriage counselor he'd insisted we see, Dr. Phillips, had taken his side completely. "Sarah, successful men face temptation daily. Trust is essential for a marriage to work." I found out later that Dr. Phillips was David's fraternity brother from Northwestern. The financial discrepancies started small, but grew like a cancer. 5,000 here, 8,000 there. "Investment opportunities you wouldn't understand," he'd say when I asked. When I offered to review them, my MBA from Northwestern gathering dust, he exploded. "This is exactly why I work 70-hour weeks. Nothing's ever enough for you. You sit here in this house I pay for, planning your little lunch dates, and question how I manage our future." That night, I found him in his study, whispering on the phone. I stood frozen in the hallway as his words drifted out. "No, baby. She doesn't suspect anything. Too busy planning her little anniversary party. After that, we're free." My hand covered my mouth to stifle a gasp as he continued. "The prenup has loopholes. My lawyer found them all. She'll get nothing but the house, which is mortgaged to hell anyway. What would you have done at this point?" I started documenting everything in August, my hand shaking as I created a hidden folder on my laptop labeled Recipe Collection. Inside, I stored screenshots of credit card statements showing hotel charges, always the Ritz-Carlton, always Tuesday afternoons when David claimed to be in depositions. I downloaded a location tracking app, telling him it was to find my phone if I lost it. He was too arrogant to check or care. The secret credit card in Ashley's name, authorized user on his business account, revealed everything. Jewelry from Tiffany's, lingerie from La Perla, and a lease on a downtown apartment that cost more than most people's mortgages. $75,000 over 18 months. Though I'd later discover it was actually closer to $200,000. My sister Margaret, a tax attorney, reviewed everything covertly in her office after hours. Sarah, this is fraud, criminal fraud. He's forged your signature on loan documents. But I wanted more evidence, needed it to be ironclad. I placed a voice recorder in his BMW, legal in Illinois, if one party consents to being recorded, Margaret had confirmed. The recordings were a goldmine of arrogance and cruelty. Uncle Gerald's dying anyway, David said to someone on speaker. Once I inherit, we'll have everything, $50 million at least. Sarah gets nothing. Prenups ironclad on inheritance. I installed a hidden camera facing his home office, disguised as a new digital photo frame displaying our wedding pictures. The irony wasn't lost on me as I watched him and Ashley on his desk 2 weeks later, the same desk where our daughter Emma used to do her homework before she left for college. Have you ever been gaslit like this? The full scope of David's betrayal emerged in September when the private investigator I'd hired, paid in cash from my mother's inheritance that David didn't know about, delivered a folder that made me physically ill. 3 affairs over 15 years. The first when I was pregnant with Emma. Your husband has a pattern, the investigator said gently. Young subordinates, always during your vulnerable moments. The money was catastrophic. $200,000 siphoned from our accounts, hidden accounts in the Caymans, our house refinanced, 3 times without my knowledge, through forged documents. Our retirement accounts emptied. My mother's jewelry that I thought was in our safe deposit box pawned. He's been planning this for 2 years minimum, the investigator continued. The Ashley situation just accelerated his timeline, but the groundwork was laid when his uncle got sick. If you're still watching, hit that like button. This story needs to be heard. Uncle Gerald had been diagnosed with cancer 6 months earlier, given maybe a year to live. David, who hadn't visited his uncle more than twice a year before, suddenly became the devoted nephew. I found emails David had sent to his law partners. 15 years of prison with a woman who peaked at 30. Thank God Uncle G's money will buy my freedom. Our mutual friends knew. Karen, who I'd considered my best friend, had helped arrange David and Ashley's secret trips. You seemed happy enough, she would later tell me. I didn't think it was my place to interfere. I sat in my car outside our house. No, his house, I realized, since he'd forged my signature off the deed, and screamed until my throat burned. Then I drove to Uncle Gerald's estate in Winnetka. James, the butler who'd known me since my wedding, let me in without question. Mrs. Mitchell, he said quietly, Mr. Gerald has been expecting you. Uncle Gerald's study smelled of leather and old cigars, though he'd quit smoking years ago. I know about David, he said without preamble, his eyes sharp despite his 82 years. My own investigator has been watching him for months. Suspected something when he started visiting more often. Boy never cared about me until the cancer diagnosis. Sarah, you've been the only real family I've had since my Martha died, Gerald continued, wheeling closer to me. David has become something I don't recognize, something cruel. The alliance we formed that day over tea would change everything. Elizabeth Hartman, Gerald's lawyer, and known as the Shark of Chicago estate law, joined us. We're rewriting the will, Gerald announced. Everything to you, Sarah. Every penny of the $53 million. I protested, but Gerald raised his hand. There are conditions. You must be legally married to David when I die, and David must be unaware of the change. Can you pretend? Can you let him humiliate you publicly, knowing what awaits? I thought about the anniversary party next week, David's planned grand revelation. He intends to leave me at the party, in front of everyone. Gerald smiled. It was terrifying and beautiful at once. Perfect. Let him. Elizabeth will read the will the next morning. I've already scheduled it with my doctor's cooperation. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. The plan crystallized. I would endure the humiliation, knowing vindication awaited. Margaret created a bulletproof trust structure. David won't be able to touch a cent, even if he contests, she assured me. Those 2 weeks before the party were Oscar-worthy on my part. I made David's favorite dinners, coq au vin, beef Wellington, his mother's lasagna recipe. I ironed his shirts with French seams, just the way he liked. I asked about his day and listened with rapt attention to his boring deposition stories. You seem happy, David commented suspiciously over a glass of Caymus Cabernet. Just excited about our anniversary, I smiled, refilling his glass. 15 years is special. He relaxed, discussing the party details. I've invited everyone important. The whole firm, country club board, your family. He wanted witnesses, I realized. Maximum humiliation for maximum impact. I've prepared a speech about our wonderful years together, I told him, and he actually laughed. October 10th, I recorded him in bed, after sex when he was most unguarded. He called Ashley on speaker, thinking I was asleep. Just 4 more days, baby. Then we're free. Uncle Gerald's lawyer called. The old man's taking a turn. Might not make it to Christmas. Millions, Ashley, millions. I breathed steadily, recording everything on the phone tucked under my pillow. The next morning, I caught him practicing his leaving speech in our bathroom mirror. Sometimes love dies, and it takes courage to admit it. Sarah and I have grown apart, and I've found someone who sees my future, not just my past. Comment below if you saw this coming. The night before the party, I discovered him moving the last of our money. The emergency fund, $30,000, I thought was protected in a separate account. I screenshot everything, sent it to Margaret. Could you keep pretending? She texted, knowing what he's about to do? I looked at my wedding ring, the one I'd saved for months to upgrade on our 10th anniversary because the original quarter carat was so small. 24 more hours, I responded. I can do anything for 24 hours. October 14th arrived crisp and clear, one of those perfect Chicago autumn days. I confirmed every detail with military precision. The country club's AV system was synced to my phone. I told them it was for our anniversary slideshow. It was, in a way. Margaret positioned herself near the exit with legal documents in her briefcase. Elizabeth Hartman arrived early, and when David asked why his uncle's lawyer was there, she simply said she was enjoying the party. Tom, the bartender, whom I'd helped get his job after David had him fired from the law firm for refusing to lie in a deposition, was ready with professional recording equipment. For the memories, I told David when he questioned it. The irony was delicious. David insisted on premium open bar, charging it to our joint credit card that he didn't know I knew was maxed out. Ashley arrived early to help set up, wearing a Roland Mouret dress that cost more than my monthly grocery budget. You look nice, she said condescendingly, eyeing my dress. David says you've been trying harder lately. I smiled. Special occasion. I was wearing the dress from our wedding reception. Still fit perfectly. Though David didn't notice the symbolism. Uncle Gerald sat in the corner with his oxygen tank, eyes sharp as a hawk's. His doctor standing nearby at his insistence for his fragile condition. The guests arrived in waves, David's law partners in their Armani suits, our country club friends with their Botox and BMWs. My family, who had no idea what was coming. Even David's college friends, who'd flown in from Boston. David had specifically invited my book club, the women he called bitter housewives, behind their backs. He wanted them to witness my humiliation. I greeted each guest warmly, memorizing who hugged me genuinely versus who avoided eye contact. Karen couldn't look at me. Richard, David's law partner, squeezed my hand meaningfully. Whatever happens tonight, Sarah, you have friends. So, not everyone was fooled. The dinner proceeded exactly as David planned. Salmon he chose, Jordan Cabernet he selected, speeches from his friends about what a power couple we were. I noticed Ashley checking her phone constantly, touching her ring finger. At 8:45 p.m., David stood, tapping his glass with his wedding ring. The sound echoed through the ballroom like a death knell. Sarah's heart pounded, but my face remained serene. I caught Margaret recording on her phone, Elizabeth positioned with perfect sight lines, Tom adjusting his camera angle. Uncle Gerald leaned forward in his wheelchair. "Before my beautiful wife speaks," David began, and I knew this was it. I took a sip of water, centered myself. 15 years of marriage, about to end in front of everyone we knew. Marriage is about growth, he pontificated, and sometimes people grow apart. The room murmured, confused. Sarah and I have had wonderful years, but I've found someone who sees my future, not just my past. Ashley stepped forward on cue. That massive ring, I recognized it as the one he'd supposedly bought for our 20th anniversary, blazing on her finger. "I'm leaving Sarah for Ashley. We're in love. What was your favorite moment? Drop it in the comments below." The gasps rippled through the room like dominoes falling. I stood slowly, every eye upon me. David expected tears, begging, a scene. Instead, I raised my champagne glass. "To honesty," I said clearly. "Finally." I turned to the crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen, my husband has given me an unexpected gift tonight. The truth. Though I do wonder, David, did you mention to Ashley that you're currently under investigation for embezzlement?" David's face went white. "What are you? Or that the house you promised her is mortgaged 3 times over through forged documents." Elizabeth stepped forward. "Mr. Mitchell, you're being recorded for potential evidence." The room exploded in chaos, but I continued calmly. "The $200,000 you stole, the credit cards in Ashley's name, the affairs before her, all documented." I clicked my phone. The AV system sprang to life, and David's voice filled the room from the recording in his car. "Uncle Gerald's dying anyway. Once I inherit, we'll have everything. 50 million at least. Sarah gets nothing. The prenup's ironclad." Uncle Gerald rose from his wheelchair, shocking everyone, including David, who thought his uncle was too weak to stand. "Boy," Gerald said, his voice carrying despite his age, "you just played yourself." Ashley's face drained of color. "David, what inheritance?" I smiled. "Oh, Ashley, you didn't know? David's been with you for Uncle Gerald's money. $53 million. I paused for effect. "Which he's inheriting tomorrow morning, or so he thinks." David lunged forward. "You bitter—" Richard and 2 other partners restrained him. "David," Richard said quietly, "stop talking. Now. You need a lawyer." But David couldn't stop. "She's lying. Uncle, tell them. Tell them about the will." Gerald wheeled closer. "The only liar here is you, boy. And everyone just heard it from your own mouth." The country club emptied like a crime scene. David was escorted out by security after he tried to grab me, screaming about how I'd ruined everything. Ashley fled crying, leaving that ring on the bar. Tom made sure to photograph it for evidence. I sat with Margaret and Uncle Gerald in the empty ballroom, finally allowing myself to shake. "You did beautifully," Gerald said, patting my hand with his papery fingers. Tomorrow morning, 9 sharp. Hartman and Associates conference room. Social media exploded within hours. Someone had live-streamed the entire revelation. Anniversary from Hell was trending by midnight. David's law firm's Facebook page filled with comments demanding his removal. Ashley's Instagram, previously full of subtle hints about her new love, with photos of expensive gifts, went private, then disappeared entirely. My phone buzzed nonstop with messages of support. My book club created a protective text chain. We never liked him. Sarah, you're a goddess. Wine tomorrow at your place? David attempted damage control via Facebook at 2 a.m. Private matters should remain private. Sarah's mental health struggles have created delusions. I ask for privacy during this difficult time. Wrong move. Tom released the full video to YouTube. Chicago lawyer destroys marriage at anniversary party. Wife's response is epic. 3 million views by morning. I changed the locks at 2 a.m. The locksmith owed me a favor after I'd helped his daughter with her college applications. David arrived at 3 a.m., drunk and pounding on the doors. The neighbors called the police. He was escorted away and spent the night in his car outside Ashley's apartment, where she wouldn't answer his calls or buzzer. I didn't sleep. I sat in my kitchen, watching the sunrise paint Lake Michigan gold, David's Northwestern law mug still in the sink. 15 years of marriage reduced to a dirty coffee cup and viral video. But at 9 a.m., everything would change. Margaret arrived at 7 with Starbucks and documents. Ready for round 2? Uncle Gerald texted, wear red to the reading, power color. Martha always said red meant victory. I chose my red Saint Laurent suit. The one David said made me look too aggressive for a wife. The conference room at Hartman and Associates filled with tension, thick enough to cut. David arrived disheveled, clearly hadn't slept, his Armani suit wrinkled, Ashley nowhere in sight. Where's my uncle? He demanded. This is manipulation, undue influence. Gerald wheeled in precisely at 9 a.m., oxygen tank prominently displayed, though I knew he didn't really need it. Let's begin, Elizabeth announced, her voice cutting through David's protests. The last will and testament of Gerald Mitchell, executed October 7, 2024, superseding all previous wills. David leaned forward greedily, already calculating. Elizabeth continued, I leave my entire estate, valued at $53 million, including all properties, investments, and personal effects, to Sarah Mitchell, my nephew's wife, on condition she remains legally married to David Mitchell at the time of my death. The silence was deafening. David's face cycled through confusion, rage, and disbelief, like a slot machine landing on bankruptcy. What? He screamed. Furthermore, Elizabeth continued calmly, should David contest this will, evidence of his financial crimes will be forwarded to the Illinois State Bar and federal prosecutors. David lunged across the conference table. You senile old bastard. You can't do this. That money is mine. I'm your blood. Security restrained him as Gerald smiled serenely. I can, and I did. You announced your divorce publicly last night, boy. But you haven't filed papers. Sarah's still your wife. My wife, really, since you never deserved her. I'll contest. Undue influence, mental incompetence, David screamed. Try it, Elizabeth said, producing a folder thick as a phone book. Psychiatric evaluation from last week. Video testimony of Mr. Gerald's reasoning. Your own words from last night admitting you were only interested in the inheritance. She slid another document across the table. This is a forensic accounting of your theft. $200,000. That's federal crime territory. I finally spoke. I'm offering you a deal, David. Uncontested divorce. You keep your law license. You walk away clean. Or I press charges and you lose everything. Your career, your freedom, everything. David's hastily called lawyer whispered urgently in his ear. You planned this, David said wonderingly, staring at me like he'd never seen me before. You knew. Uncle Gerald knew, I corrected. I just survived long enough to be saved. The divorce papers were signed within the hour. David got nothing, not even the house, which my lawyer proved was purchased with my mother's inheritance. The faithful wife, Gerald said, squeezing my hand, was always the only family I had. 6 months later, I'm writing this from my new office overlooking Lake Michigan, where I run the charitable foundation I created with Gerald's fortune. He lived another 3 beautiful months after the party, long enough to see David disbarred for embezzlement and Ashley testify against him for immunity. Best entertainment of my life, Gerald chuckled before passing peacefully in his sleep. David serving 18 months minimum security, his reputation destroyed, his career over. Ashley works at a Starbucks in Milwaukee. Someone sent me a photo of her in the green apron, and I felt nothing but pity. The foundation helps women escape financial abuse. We've helped 17 women in 6 months, providing legal aid and safe housing. My story became a cautionary tale taught in law schools about fiduciary duty and ethics. The house that was once my prison is now my haven. I converted David's office into a library, his gym into an art studio, where I've rediscovered my love of painting. The book club meets there weekly. We call ourselves the Bitter Housewives, ironically now, and we drink wine and celebrate our freedom. Margaret practices law from my foundation, specializing in financial fraud divorces. You saved yourself, she tells me over wine. Uncle Gerald just provided the weapon. The anniversary party video has 10 million views now. Comments pour in daily from women sharing similar stories, finding strength in mine. I respond to as many as I can, offering resources and hope. I speak at conferences now. How to recognize financial abuse before it's too late. My opener always gets attention. My husband announced he was leaving me for his secretary at our anniversary party. It was the best gift he ever gave me. The country club banned David for life, but gave me a lifetime membership, free. I have lunch there monthly with Elizabeth, planning our next case. Tom the bartender. He's now the foundation's official event photographer. His business card reads, "Capturing moments of justice." I keep one photo on my desk. Uncle Gerald at the party, raising his champagne glass to me as David speaks. His eyes hold the promise he kept, that faithful wives win in the end. I've started dating again, carefully. A doctor who volunteers at the foundation, who saw my story online and admired my strength, not my money. He brings me coffee and asks about my day, and has never once told me I'm being dramatic. David's former law partners send clients my way. Richard told me, "We always knew he was a snake. We just didn't know you were a mongoose." The final irony? David writes me from prison, begging for money, claiming I owe him for the best years of his life. I frame the letter in my office, right next to my MBA and Gerald's portrait. Underneath, a plaque reads, "The best revenge is a life well lived, but $53 million doesn't hurt. Remember, you deserve someone who chooses you every single day, not someone who treats you like an option while planning their escape." If this story of justice resonated with you, please hit that like button right now. It helps other women find this story who might need to hear it. Share your own experience if something similar happened to you. The comments have become an incredible support community. Subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the next story. Because Ashley just contacted me with information about David's other victims, and that revelation is going to shock you even more than this one. Share this with someone who might need to hear it. You never know who's suffering in silence, thinking they're alone. Until next time, remember, the faithful always rise, and karma keeps perfect books. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.